The next morning, Sarah arrived at her office 2 hours early to make final preparations for Elena's visit. Working with Marcus remotely, she had transformed her workspace into a sophisticated counterintelligence operation disguised as a normal academic office. Hidden cameras captured every angle, keyloggers monitored all computer activity, and network analyzers traced every packet of data that moved through the system. The honeypot network Marcus had designed was a masterpiece of deception. To anyone accessing it, the fake systems would appear to contain the university's most sensitive research data. In reality, they were carefully crafted duplicates filled with false information and digital traps that would reveal exactly what the attackers were seeking and how they planned to use it. At exactly 9 o'clock, Elena arrived at Sarah's office carrying a professional-looking laptop bag and wearing the confident expression of someone who believed victory was within reach. She had no idea that her every movement was being monitored by both Sarah's hidden recording equipment and FBI surveillance teams positioned throughout the building. "Sarah, thank you so much for making time for this," Elena said as she settled into the chair beside Sarah's desk. "I've brought some diagnostic tools that should help us identify the compatibility issues with the encryption software." Sarah watched carefully as Elena unpacked her equipment. The laptop Elena produced was an expensive model that had clearly been modified with additional hardware, probably designed for sophisticated hacking operations. Elena's movements were practiced and efficient, suggesting she had performed similar operations many times before. "Before we start," Sarah said, "I should mention that our IT security requires me to log any external access to our systems. It's just a standard procedure, but I wanted you to know." Elena nodded without concern. Of course, that's perfectly reasonable for a secure facility. What Elena didn't realize was that Sarah's logging would capture far more than just basic access information. Every keystroke, every file accessed, and every command executed would be recorded and analyzed in real time. As Elena began connecting her laptop to Sarah's workstation, Sarah's hidden monitoring systems immediately detected sophisticated scanning software probing the network architecture. Elena wasn't just troubleshooting compatibility issues. She was conducting a comprehensive penetration test to map the entire university system. "I'm seeing some interesting conflicts," Elena said, her fingers moving rapidly across her keyboard. "Your security protocols are more advanced than I expected. This might take a little longer than I planned." Sarah nodded sympathetically while watching the data streams on her hidden monitoring display. Elena's scanning software was incredibly sophisticated, using techniques that Sarah recognized from advanced persistent threat reports. This confirmed her suspicions about the level of resources backing this operation. 20 minutes into the session, Elena announced a breakthrough. "I think I've identified the problem. There's a conflict between your encryption software and some legacy security protocols. I need to modify a few configuration files to resolve it." Sarah leaned forward to watch Elena's screen, pretending to follow along while actually documenting every step of the process. Elena was installing backdoor access tools disguised as security updates, creating persistent access points that would allow her team to return to the system later without detection. "This is fascinating," Sarah said, playing her role perfectly. "I've never seen configuration modifications like these before. Could you explain what you're doing?" Elena smiled, clearly enjoying the opportunity to demonstrate her technical expertise to someone she believed was less skilled. "These modifications create compatibility bridges between different security protocols. It's quite advanced. Most people wouldn't understand the underlying principles." As Elena worked, Sarah's monitoring systems were quietly tracing every network connection back to its source. The attack infrastructure Elena was using included servers in multiple countries, encrypted communication channels, and sophisticated obfuscation techniques. But Sarah's years of experience in digital forensics had taught her that even the most careful attackers left traces. After an hour of work, Elena sat back with satisfaction. "I think that should resolve all the compatibility issues. The encryption software should work perfectly now. Why don't you try running some of your analysis again to test it?" Sarah pretended to run some simulations while actually triggering the final phase of her counteroperation. The fake data Elena's backdoors were designed to steal began flowing through the network, each file tagged with invisible markers that would allow Sarah to trace exactly where it ended up. "This is working beautifully," Sarah said, displaying false excitement. The processing speed is much faster than before. You've really solved our problems. Elena looked pleased with herself. I'm glad I could help. This kind of collaboration is exactly what advances the field. I'll be interested to see the results of your ongoing research. As Elena began packing up her equipment, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Package delivered. All systems recording. Phase 2 ready when you are. Sarah looked up at Elena with a different expression than she had worn all morning. The naive academic mask was gone, replaced by the focused intensity of a professional counterintelligence operative. Elena, before you go, I have something I'd like to show you. Sarah turned her monitor so Elena could see the display. Instead of research data, the screen showed a real-time network analysis revealing every connection Elena's backdoor software had made, every server it had contacted, and every piece of malicious code it had attempted to install. Elena's confident expression faltered as she realized what she was looking at. I'm not sure what this is supposed to show. It shows that you're not Dr. Amanda Foster. You're not from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the encryption software you've been trying to get me to install is actually sophisticated malware designed to steal classified research data. Elena's professional composure cracked for the first time. She began reaching for her laptop, but Sarah was faster, pressing a button on her desk that locked down the entire network and triggered the FBI response protocol. I wouldn't try to delete anything, Sarah said calmly. Your entire session has been recorded, and all your network traffic has been traced back to its source. We know about the servers in Romania, the Bitcoin payments from accounts in Hong Kong, and the fact that your real name is Elena Vasquez. Elena stared at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. You're not what you seem. No, I'm exactly what I seem. I'm a cybersecurity researcher with advanced degrees in computer forensics and artificial intelligence. I'm someone who designs the security protocols that protect classified government systems. And I'm definitely not someone who can be easily manipulated by amateur social engineering tactics. The office door opened, and Agent Rodriguez entered with 2 other FBI agents. Elena looked around the room as if searching for an escape route, but her shoulders finally sagged in defeat. Elena Vasquez, you're under arrest for violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, attempted theft of classified government information, and conspiracy to commit espionage, Agent Rodriguez announced as she placed handcuffs on Elena's wrists. As the agents led Elena away, Agent Rodriguez turned to Sarah. Dr. Chun, I have to admit that your unconventional approach produced better results than our traditional investigation methods might have achieved. The intelligence you gathered will be invaluable in understanding the full scope of this operation. But Sarah's work was just beginning. Over the next several hours, she and Marcus analyzed the treasure trove of data they had collected from Elena's attempted penetration. The network traces revealed connections to criminal organizations in Eastern Europe, intelligence agencies in several hostile nations, and a sophisticated international network of industrial espionage operations. The fake encryption software Elena had tried to install contained advanced surveillance capabilities that would have given the attackers access to not just the university's research, but also personal information about faculty, students, and staff. The operation was far more comprehensive and dangerous than anyone had initially realized. 3 days later, coordinated law enforcement actions in 6 countries resulted in the arrest of 14 individuals connected to the network, including Marcus Webb, who was captured attempting to flee to a non-extradition country. The evidence Sarah had gathered proved instrumental in dismantling what investigators called one of the most sophisticated industrial espionage operations they had ever encountered. The intelligence community took notice of Sarah's counteroperation. Within a week, she received calls from the NSA, CIA, and Department of Defense offering positions that would have tripled her salary and given her access to the most advanced cybersecurity challenges in the government. But Sarah declined all the offers. She preferred the freedom and creativity of academic research, and she had proven that the most important battles in cybersecurity could be won with intelligence and preparation rather than massive budgets and institutional authority. Dr. Henley, who had been mortified to learn that he had nearly fallen for Webb's social engineering attack, asked Sarah to lead a new initiative designing training programs to help other institutions defend against similar operations. Sarah, I have to ask, Dr. Henley said during one of their planning meetings. How did you know something was wrong so early in the process? Most people would have been completely fooled by their approach. Sarah smiled. They made the classic mistake of assuming that quiet, unassuming people are also naive and easily manipulated. They saw a woman working behind the scenes and assumed I lacked the skills or confidence to fight back. But the reason I work behind the scenes is because that's where the real technical work gets done. 6 months later, Sarah published a paper titled Advanced Social Engineering Defense Through Technical Counterintelligence that became required reading at cybersecurity programs around the world. The paper detailed her experiences with the operation and provided a framework for turning social engineering attacks into opportunities for gathering intelligence about the attackers. The techniques Sarah developed were adopted by law enforcement agencies, private companies, and government institutions facing similar threats. Her approach of using technical expertise and careful preparation to turn the tables on sophisticated attackers became known in cybersecurity circles as the Chin Protocol. Elena Vasquez, facing multiple federal charges and evidence that could put her in prison for decades, eventually agreed to cooperate with investigators. Her testimony revealed details about the international network's operations, funding sources, and future targets. The information led to the prevention of similar attacks against research institutions, defense contractors, and technology companies across the United States and allied nations. Marcus Webb was less cooperative, maintaining his innocence despite overwhelming evidence of his role in the operation. He was ultimately convicted on 17 counts of espionage, computer fraud, and conspiracy. During his sentencing hearing, the federal prosecutor noted that his operation had targeted one of the most capable cybersecurity professionals in the country and paid the price for that miscalculation. The Department of Defense project that had been the original target of the attack was completed successfully, with enhanced security protocols based partly on lessons learned from Sarah's counteroperation. The new encryption system became a model for protecting classified research in academic settings. Agent Rodriguez, who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's plan to conduct her own investigation, wrote in her final report that civilian experts with specialized technical skills could be valuable assets in counterintelligence operations when properly supported and coordinated with law enforcement. Marcus Thompson, Sarah's former NSA colleague who had helped design the counteroperation, left his private consulting business to establish a new cybersecurity firm specializing in defending academic and research institutions against advanced persistent threats. Sarah joined him as a partner, bringing her unique combination of technical expertise and operational experience to clients facing similar challenges. 1 year after the operation, Sarah received a commendation from the FBI director for her exceptional contribution to national security through innovative counterintelligence techniques. The ceremony was private, attended only by the investigators who had worked on the case, and a few senior officials who understood the significance of what she had accomplished. But the recognition Sarah valued most came from her students and colleagues, who had watched her transform from a quiet researcher into a leader in the fight against cybersecurity threats. Her experience had proven that the most effective defense against sophisticated attacks often came from understanding both the technical and human elements of the threat. The criminals who had targeted Sarah Chun expecting to find an easy mark had instead encountered someone who understood that the best defense was often a strong offense. They had chosen to target her because they thought she was weak, isolated, and easily manipulated. They couldn't have been more wrong. Sarah's counteroperation had not only protected her university's research and exposed an international espionage network, but had also established new standards for how cybersecurity professionals could fight back against advanced threats. The quiet researcher who preferred working behind the scenes had proven that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who don't look dangerous at all. In the end, the operation that was supposed to make Sarah a victim had instead made her a legend in the cybersecurity community. And the criminals who had thought they were targeting the right woman for their scheme learned too late that they had actually chosen exactly the wrong person to mess with. Sarah spent the next 3 hours meticulously documenting every aspect of her interaction with the fake Dr. Foster. She created detailed screenshots of the emails, traced IP addresses, and began building a comprehensive profile of the attack methods being used against her. Her years of experience in cybersecurity had taught her that the best defense was often a strong offense. Working from her secure home office that evening, Sarah set up a virtual environment on an isolated computer system. This would allow her to safely examine the malicious software without risking her main systems. She downloaded the fake encryption program and began reverse engineering its code to understand exactly what it was designed to do. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The malware was far more sophisticated than anything she had seen in her professional work. It was designed to create persistent backdoor access to any network it touched, with capabilities for data exfiltration, keystroke logging, and even remote activation of cameras and microphones. This wasn't just corporate espionage. It was the kind of tool used by nation-state actors. As Sarah analyzed the code, she noticed something interesting. The malware contained debugging symbols and comments that the creators had forgotten to remove. These digital breadcrumbs included references to a command and control server and pieces of code that matched signatures she had seen in intelligence reports about advanced persistent threat groups. Sarah realized she had stumbled into something much bigger than a simple attempt to steal research data. The people targeting her were part of a sophisticated international operation with resources and capabilities that suggested government backing. The question was, which government? Rather than feeling intimidated, Sarah felt energized. This was exactly the kind of challenge that had drawn her to cybersecurity in the first place. She began developing a plan that would not only protect the Institute's data, but potentially expose the entire operation. Meanwhile, Webb was growing impatient. It had been 2 days since Elena's successful meeting with Sarah, and they had expected her to install the malware within hours of receiving it. The lack of response suggested either technical problems or growing suspicion on Sarah's part. Maybe we pushed too hard too fast, Elena suggested during a secure video call with Webb's team. She seemed eager to collaborate, but she's also clearly more technically sophisticated than we initially assessed. Webb disagreed. We've invested too much time and resources to back down now. The client is expecting results within the week, and the university's defenses are only going to get stronger. We need to escalate the pressure. The next morning, Sarah received a phone call at her office. The caller identified himself as Agent David Park from the FBI's Cybercrime Division. He explained that the Bureau had received intelligence about a potential threat to the university's classified research projects and needed to meet with her immediately to discuss security protocols. Sarah's instincts told her something was wrong. Agent Rodriguez was her established FBI contact for the DoD project, and any legitimate communication should have come through her. Sarah asked for Agent Park's badge number and supervisor contact information, promising to call him back after verification. When Sarah called the FBI field office, she discovered there was no Agent David Park in the Cybercrime Division. The receptionist connected her with Agent Rodriguez, who listened to Sarah's account with growing alarm. Dr. Chun, you need to understand that you're dealing with a highly sophisticated threat actor, Agent Rodriguez explained. The fact that they're using multiple attack vectors and impersonating federal agents suggests this is a well-funded operation with significant resources. Agent Rodriguez, I need to tell you something, Sarah said. I've been conducting my own investigation into these attacks, and I think I've identified some important intelligence about who's behind them. There was a pause on the line. Dr. Chun, while I appreciate your initiative, this situation is potentially very dangerous. These people have already demonstrated they're willing to impersonate government officials. We need to bring you in for protective custody while we investigate. Sarah had expected this response, but she wasn't ready to step aside. Agent Rodriguez, with respect, I think I'm in a unique position to help with this investigation. They've already shown their hand to me, and my technical expertise gives me capabilities that could be valuable in understanding and countering their operations. Absolutely not, Agent Rodriguez said firmly. This isn't a movie, Dr. Chun. These are professional criminals who won't hesitate to escalate to physical threats if they feel cornered. Your job is to stay safe and let law enforcement handle this. After hanging up, Sarah sat in her office contemplating her options. She understood Agent Rodriguez's concerns, but she also knew that conventional law enforcement approaches might not be effective against this level of sophistication. The attackers were already inside the university's systems to some extent, gathering intelligence, and planning their next moves. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for law enforcement to slowly build a case, she would use her unique position and technical skills to turn herself into the hunter rather than the hunted. But she would need help from someone she could trust completely. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in 2 years. The voice that answered was gravelly and familiar. Marcus Thompson. Marcus, it's Sarah Chun. I need your help with something unusual. There was a pause. Marcus Thompson was a former NSA analyst who had left government service to become a private cybersecurity consultant. He and Sarah had worked together on several classified projects, and she trusted his judgment implicitly. Sarah, it's been too long. What kind of unusual are we talking about? Sarah explained the situation in detail, including her analysis of the malware and her suspicions about the sophistication of the operation. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally asking technical questions that confirmed he understood the implications. Sarah, this sounds like the kind of operation I used to track when I was with the agency, Marcus said finally. If you're right about the sophistication level, you're dealing with people who have access to nation-state level resources and training. Are you sure you want to go up against that? Marcus, they picked the wrong target. I'm not just going to hide and hope law enforcement can protect me. These people tried to manipulate me and use my professional relationships against me. I want to show them what happens when they underestimate the wrong person. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Okay, but if we're going to do this, we do it smart. No cowboy tactics, no unnecessary risks. We gather intelligence, we document everything, and we coordinate with law enforcement when appropriate. Deal. Deal. Over the next several hours, Marcus drove to the university and met Sarah in her office. Together, they began developing what they called Operation Reversal, a plan to turn the attackers' own methods against them while gathering enough evidence to expose the entire operation. The first step was to create a controlled environment where Sarah could appear to be cooperating with the attackers while actually monitoring everything they did. Marcus helped her set up a sophisticated honeypot system, a fake network that looked like the university's real systems, but was actually isolated and monitored. The beauty of this approach, Marcus explained as they configured the monitoring systems, is that they think they're getting what they want, but we're actually learning everything about their methods, their capabilities, and potentially their identity. Sarah sent an email to the fake Dr. Foster, apologizing for the delay in installing the encryption software and explaining that she had been dealing with some technical issues. She expressed continued interest in the collaboration and promised to install the software the next day. Within an hour, she received a response that seemed relieved and helpful. The fake Dr. Foster offered to provide technical support for the installation and suggested they meet again in person to discuss the next phase of their collaboration. This time, Sarah was prepared. She agreed to meet at a different location, a restaurant near the university that Marcus could easily monitor from an adjacent building. Sarah would wear a sophisticated recording device, and Marcus would have both audio and video surveillance of the entire meeting. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Dr. Henley called an emergency meeting of the entire Cybersecurity Institute staff. When Sarah arrived at the conference room, she was surprised to see Agent Rodriguez and several other federal agents present. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Henley began nervously. These agents are here to brief us on a serious security threat to our current projects. Agent Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez stood and addressed the room with professional authority. We have credible intelligence that foreign agents are actively targeting this institute and its personnel. We believe they're specifically interested in the Department of Defense encryption project and may have already attempted to compromise some of you. Sarah felt a moment of panic. If the FBI was going public with the investigation, it could interfere with her own plans to gather intelligence about the attackers. We're implementing immediate security protocols, Agent Rodriguez continued. All personnel are to report any unusual contact or communication immediately. Anyone who believes they may have been targeted should speak with me privately after this meeting. After the meeting, Sarah approached Agent Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez, I need to update you on some developments in my situation. They stepped into a private office, where Sarah explained her analysis of the malware and her plans to meet with the fake Dr. Foster again. Agent Rodriguez listened with a mixture of professional interest and growing alarm. Dr. Chun, I understand your desire to help, but what you're proposing is essentially an unauthorized undercover operation. You don't have the training or legal authority to conduct this kind of investigation. But I have something you don't, Sarah replied. They trust me. They think I'm exactly the kind of naive academic they can manipulate. If I suddenly disappear into protective custody, they'll know their operation has been compromised, and they'll disappear. Agent Rodriguez considered this. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah outlined her plan to meet with the fake Dr. Foster while recording everything and feeding false information back to the attackers. She explained the honeypot system she and Marcus had developed and the intelligence they hoped to gather. Dr. Chun, I can't officially authorize what you're suggesting, but I also can't ignore the potential value of the intelligence you might gather. If you're absolutely determined to do this, I want you to understand the risks and agree to certain conditions. They spent the next hour developing a modified plan that would give Sarah the freedom to pursue her investigation while providing FBI backup and oversight. Agent Rodriguez would monitor the meeting remotely, and Sarah would have a panic signal that would bring immediate law enforcement response. As Sarah left the meeting, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She was about to go head-to-head with professional intelligence operatives, using her technical skills and analytical mind as weapons. They had chosen to target her because they thought she would be easy to manipulate. They were about to learn how wrong they were. That afternoon, Sarah met Elena again, this time at an upscale restaurant downtown. Elena appeared relaxed and confident, clearly believing that her operation was proceeding smoothly. She had no idea that every word was being recorded and that Sarah was actively analyzing her behavior for clues about the larger operation. Sarah, I'm so glad we could meet again, Elena said as they sat down. I've been really excited about the possibilities for our collaboration. Did you have a chance to install the encryption software? I did, Sarah lied smoothly. Though I have to admit, I ran into some technical issues. The software seems to be conflicting with some of our existing security protocols. Elena's expression showed a flicker of concern before returning to its practiced warmth. Oh, that's not uncommon with government security software. Sometimes the compatibility issues can be complex. Would you mind if I took a look at your system configuration? I might be able to help troubleshoot the problems. This was exactly what Sarah had hoped to hear. Elena was offering to personally access the university's systems, which would give Sarah the perfect opportunity to trace the attack back to its source. That would be incredibly helpful, Sarah said. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning? I have access to our main systems there, and we could work through the issues together. Elena agreed enthusiastically, and they spent the rest of their meal discussing technical details that would help Sarah prepare for the next phase of her counteroperation. As they parted ways, Sarah felt confident that she was successfully drawing the attackers deeper into her trap. What she didn't realize was that Elena was equally confident that she was drawing Sarah deeper into hers. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test both women's skills, intelligence, and determination. The next morning would determine whether Sarah's counteroperation would succeed in exposing the attackers, or whether she would become their latest victim. The morning sun cast long shadows across the university parking lot as Dr. Sarah Chun pulled her modest Honda Civic into a space near the engineering building. At 34, she had the kind of understated presence that made people overlook her in crowded rooms. Average height, shoulder-length black hair usually pulled back in a simple ponytail, and a preference for practical clothing over fashion statements. Nothing about her appearance suggested she held 3 advanced degrees in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and computer forensics. Sarah worked as a senior research analyst at Riverside University's Cybersecurity Institute, a position that kept her largely behind the scenes. While her male colleagues often appeared at conferences and in media interviews, Sarah preferred the quiet satisfaction of solving complex digital puzzles. Her office, tucked away on the 3rd floor of the engineering building, was filled with multiple monitors, server components, and the gentle hum of cooling fans. The university had recently landed a major contract with the Department of Defense to develop next-generation encryption protocols. The project, classified at the highest levels, attracted attention from various government agencies and private contractors. Sarah had been assigned as the lead technical analyst, a role that gave her access to some of the most sensitive research data in the country. What Sarah didn't know was that she had become a target. 3 floors below, in the university's main conference room, a meeting was taking place that would change everything. Marcus Webb, a well-dressed man in his 40s claiming to represent a private security firm, sat across from Dr. Robert Henley, the institute's director. Webb's company, Apex Security Solutions, had convinced the university administration that they needed to conduct a red team exercise to test the institute's security protocols. Dr. Henley, I appreciate your cooperation with this assessment, Webb said, adjusting his expensive tie. My team has identified several potential vulnerabilities in your system. We believe the best way to test your defenses is through a targeted social engineering operation. Dr. Henley, a nervous man who understood computers better than people, nodded eagerly. Of course, Mr. Webb. We want to ensure our security is airtight. What exactly do you have in mind? Webb smiled, but there was something cold about the expression. We've identified Dr. Sarah Chun as what we call a soft target. Based on our preliminary assessment, she appears to be the weakest link in your security chain. Quiet, keeps to herself, probably trusting to a fault. My team believes they can manipulate her into providing access to your classified systems. Sarah? Dr. Henley looked surprised. But she's one of our most careful researchers. She designed half of our current security protocols. That's exactly what makes this exercise valuable, Webb replied smoothly. If we can compromise someone with her level of access, it demonstrates a serious vulnerability. Don't worry, this is purely a test. No actual data will be stolen or compromised. We'll simply document how far we can get and provide you with a comprehensive report on your security weaknesses. What Dr. Henley didn't know was that Webb was lying about almost everything. Apex Security Solutions was real, but Webb wasn't working for them anymore. 6 months earlier, he had been quietly dismissed for conducting unauthorized operations and selling client information to the highest bidder. Now he worked for a shadowy organization that specialized in stealing cutting-edge research and selling it to foreign governments and criminal enterprises. Webb's team had been watching the university for weeks, mapping out the security systems, identifying key personnel, and looking for the easiest way to access the Department of Defense project. Sarah had indeed been identified as a target, but not because she was weak. She had been chosen because her level of access made her valuable, and her low profile meant her compromise might go unnoticed longer. After the meeting, Dr. Henley felt obligated to inform the FBI liaison assigned to the DoD project about the planned security test. Agent Lisa Rodriguez listened to his explanation with growing concern. Dr. Henley, I need you to understand something, Agent Rodriguez said carefully. The FBI has not been notified of any authorized penetration testing on this project. Are you absolutely certain this Apex Security Solutions is legitimate? Well, they came highly recommended, and they presented very professional credentials, Dr. Henley stammered. Mr. Webb seemed to know a great deal about our systems and security protocols. Agent Rodriguez made a note to investigate Webb and his company immediately. Doctor, I'm going to ask you to proceed very carefully. Don't inform anyone about this conversation, but please keep me updated on any unusual activity. If these people are not who they claim to be, Dr. Chun could be in serious danger. Meanwhile, Sarah was completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. She spent her morning reviewing encryption algorithms and running security scans on the Institute's network. Her work required intense concentration, and she had developed a habit of losing track of time when deep in analysis. Around noon, her computer chimed with an incoming email. The sender was identified as Dr. Amanda Foster from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, a government agency that worked closely with the DoD on cybersecurity projects. The email requested a meeting to discuss potential collaboration on the encryption project. Sarah recognized the name Dr. Foster was a well-respected researcher she had hoped to meet for years. The email included what appeared to be proper government credentials and referenced specific details about the current project that only someone with legitimate access should know. Sarah replied agreeing to meet at a nearby coffee shop that afternoon. What Sarah didn't realize was that the email was a carefully crafted fake. Webb's team had spent weeks gathering information about the project, the people involved, and Sarah's professional interests. They had created a detailed profile of her personality, her career goals, and her likely responses to different approaches. The woman who would meet Sarah that afternoon was not Dr. Amanda Foster. She was Elena Vasquez, a professional con artist who specialized in technical social engineering. Elena had spent 2 days studying Dr. Foster's published papers, watching videos of her presentations, and learning to mimic her speaking style and mannerisms. As Sarah walked toward the coffee shop, she felt excited about the opportunity to discuss her work with someone she respected. She had printed out several research papers to share and had prepared questions about Dr. Foster's latest publications. Sarah prided herself on being prepared for professional meetings, a habit that had served her well throughout her career. The coffee shop was busy with the usual lunch crowd of students and faculty. Sarah spotted a woman sitting alone at a corner table, matching the photo she had found of Dr. Foster online. Elena had done her homework well, choosing clothes and accessories that matched Dr. Foster's professional style. Dr. Chun. Elena stood and extended her hand with a warm smile. I'm Amanda Foster. Thank you so much for meeting with me on short notice. Sarah shook hands, immediately impressed by Elena's firm grip and confident demeanor. Dr. Foster, it's such an honor to meet you. I've been following your work on quantum encryption for years. As they sat down with their coffee, Elena began the delicate process of building trust and gathering information. She demonstrated impressive knowledge of cybersecurity principles and asked insightful questions about Sarah's research. For 30 minutes, they engaged in exactly the kind of technical discussion Sarah had hoped for. Your approach to the key distribution problem is fascinating, Elena said, leaning forward with apparent interest. I've been working on something similar for a classified project, but I'm hitting some roadblocks. Would you mind if I showed you some of my preliminary results? I could really use a fresh perspective from someone with your expertise. Sarah felt flattered by the request. Here was one of the field's leading experts asking for her opinion. I'd be happy to help if I can. Elena pulled out a tablet and opened what appeared to be a complex encryption algorithm. The mathematics looked legitimate, and the problem she described was exactly the kind of challenge Sarah enjoyed solving. As she studied the equations, Sarah began suggesting modifications and improvements. That's brilliant, Elena said, making notes on the tablet. I never would have thought of that approach. You know, this could really benefit from some collaborative analysis. Do you have access to any high-performance computing resources where we could test these modifications? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. The university has an excellent system. I could run some simulations this afternoon if you'd like. That would be incredible. Would it be possible for you to send me the results? I'm supposed to present this to my supervisor tomorrow, and having your analysis would be extremely valuable. Sarah agreed without hesitation. This was exactly the kind of collaboration that advanced the field and built professional relationships. She gave Elena her direct email address and promised to send the simulation results by the end of the day. As they parted ways, Elena felt satisfied with the meeting's progress. Phase 1 of the operation was complete. She had established trust, identified Sarah's motivations, and positioned herself as a legitimate collaborator. The next phase would be more delicate, gradually escalating the requests until Sarah unknowingly provided access to the classified systems. Sarah returned to her office, energized by the meeting. She immediately began setting up the simulations DR. Foster had requested, using her access to the Institute's most powerful computing cluster. The work was genuinely interesting, and she found herself absorbed in the mathematical challenges. What Sarah didn't notice was that the algorithms Elena had shown her contained subtle markers designed to identify specific characteristics of the computing system they were run on. When Sarah executed the simulations, the code quietly gathered information about the network configuration, security protocols, and system vulnerabilities. By late afternoon, Sarah had completed the analysis and prepared a comprehensive report. She attached the results to an email and sent them to the address Dr. Foster had provided. Along with the simulation data, the email unknowingly included detailed information about the Institute's computer systems that Webb's team could use to plan their next move. Elena received the email within minutes and immediately forwarded it to Webb. He studied the data with growing excitement. The information was even more valuable than they had hoped. Not only did they now have detailed intelligence about the Institute's security systems, but they had confirmed that Sarah was willing to collaborate and share sensitive information with minimal verification. Perfect, Webb muttered to himself as he analyzed the network data. She's going to make this easier than we thought. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work to find another email from Dr. Foster. This message expressed enthusiasm about the simulation results and included an invitation to participate in a larger collaborative project involving multiple government agencies. The email explained that due to the sensitive nature of the work, all communications would need to be encrypted using a special protocol Dr. Foster's team had developed. The email included a link to download the encryption software and detailed instructions for its installation. To Sarah, this seemed like a reasonable security precaution for sensitive government work. She had often dealt with specialized software requirements for classified projects. What she was actually being asked to download was sophisticated malware disguised as encryption software. Once installed, it would give Webb's team remote access to her computer and, through it, the entire Institute network. The software was expertly crafted to appear legitimate, complete with government-style documentation and official-looking digital signatures. Sarah hesitated for a moment before clicking the download link. Something felt slightly off about the request, though she couldn't put her finger on what was bothering her. Dr. Foster's communication style seemed subtly different from their face-to-face meeting, more formal and less conversational. Instead of immediately installing the software, Sarah decided to verify Dr. Foster's identity through official channels. She called the main number for the National Institute of Standards and Technology and asked to be transferred to Dr. Amanda Foster's office. After being transferred twice, Sarah found herself speaking to Dr. Foster's actual assistant. "I'm sorry," the assistant said, "but Dr. Foster is currently in Switzerland at a conference. She won't be back for another week. Can I take a message?" Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. If Dr. Foster was in Switzerland, who had she met with yesterday? And who was sending these emails? She immediately realized she had been the target of some kind of deception, though she didn't yet understand the full scope of the operation. Rather than panicking, Sarah's analytical mind began working through the problem systematically. Someone had gone to considerable effort to impersonate Dr. Foster and gain her trust. They had demonstrated detailed knowledge of her work and the Institute's projects. This wasn't a random scam. It was a targeted operation with sophisticated planning behind it. Sarah's first instinct was to contact Dr. Henley, but something made her hesitate. If this was a serious security breach, she needed to be careful about who she trusted with the information. Instead, she decided to document everything carefully and conduct her own investigation before alerting anyone else. She began by analyzing the emails she had received, examining the headers, and tracing the routing information. Her expertise in digital forensics allowed her to quickly identify several red flags that she had missed in her initial excitement about the collaboration. The emails were using sophisticated spoofing techniques, but they weren't perfect. As Sarah dug deeper into the technical details, she began to understand the true sophistication of the operation. The fake Dr. Foster had demonstrated genuine expertise in cybersecurity, suggesting this wasn't the work of amateur criminals. The malware disguised as encryption software was particularly concerning. It was advanced enough that most people would never recognize it as malicious. Sarah realized she was dealing with professional operators who had specifically targeted her and the Institute. But, rather than feeling afraid, she felt a growing sense of anger. These people had tried to manipulate her professional relationships and exploit her trust. They had underestimated her technical skills and her ability to recognize when something was wrong. She decided to turn the tables on them. Instead of simply reporting the incident and letting others handle it, Sarah began planning her own counter-operations. She would use her skills in cybersecurity and digital forensics to gather intelligence about her attackers. She would make them regret choosing her as their target. The game had begun, and Sarah Chun was about to prove that they had picked the wrong woman to mess with.